health issues. But start at the grassroots, not in the bureaucracy and not in the communication. Get out there and and work with the people that are hands-on in every community in Nova Scotia. You know, less than 4% of the Department of Health's $1.9 billion is spent on health promotion in this province, Madam Speaker. I mean, maybe we should have a look at putting the percentage up a little higher to spend some more money on our most valuable resources, our kids and our youth in these communities, Madam Speaker. The Office of Health Promotion is excellent to provide the government, is going to put some more resources behind it and emphasize programs. Well, I mean, I understand that, but I mean programs, results rather than bureaucracy. That's what I'd like to see, Madam Speaker. I'd like to see some results. If the office is going to be highly involved in doing some youth programming, whether it be Boys and Girls Clubs, Whitney Pier Youth Club and other things, I'd like to see some kind of strategies, some kind of commitment for this government, where that money is going to be spent, to make sure that our youth have something to do. And maybe also, I know that there was a bill announced this week for the government announced to do with paying for the schools. I mean, in my community, the school was always free, not the P3 ones, no excuse over there, but not the P3 schools. The other schools in my community, I could get, all we had to pay for was the custodian to come up and shut the alarm off, and then the kids could play floor hockey or basketball and everything else. But I mean, maybe with this here Office of Health Promotion, maybe the minister and his office could have a look at paying for this custodian. You know, a small nonprofit organization pays $40 every 2 weeks to have somebody come to school to turn the alarm off while their staff look after the kids. Maybe with this office, they can have that paid for. And I noticed in the Blue Book recently in the election, there was a thing in the Blue, my memory serves me right, about they were going to pay $150 per child, if I was correct. And I did send a letter to the minister on this and asked him about this funding, $150 per child to get them involved in sports. And the minister did reply to me in a timely fashion. I'll give him credit for that, and got back to me and said to me that that wouldn't start until the year 2005 and 2006.
Whoa.
So I was kind of like I was saying,
Right.
well, it didn't say that in the Blue Book, but it said it in the minister's letter back to me, and I thank him very much for sending me that letter. You know, so I mean, and you know that MP Peter Stauffer from here in the Halifax area also has a private member's bill in the House of Commons to deal with having tax credits for kids that are involved in sports. The honourable member, MP, is trying to push that in Ottawa right now. So maybe with his bill and the Tory Blue Book promise that we will finally get some action on this this very serious matter of drug use and obesity and health, smoking, tobacco use, physical activity as achieved through sports and recreation. Just great for the kids. I think if you're busy hands, you're happy hands. I think if you're in the gym playing basketball and floor hockey and everything else, you're not down the road. You're not hanging out on the street corners. You have something to do. I remember myself starting a midnight basketball program on Friday night. And it was actually a theory to start the kids on Friday night to come into the school to play basketball. And the reason I started that program at 10 o'clock at night was because I wanted to tire them out, so at 12 o'clock they wouldn't be able to go down the road and hang out, that they'd go home, have a shower, and go to bed. I mean, and they didn't know that I was just, you know, there's always a method to somebody's madness by having the gym on a Friday night and making them physically active, whether it be programs. In my facility in Whitney Pier, we have a self-defense program, weightlifting. You know, maybe the Office of Health Promotion could look at sponsoring some programs in my area at the youth center. It's well established. It's been 10 years this May since that club has been there, with weightlifting and taekwondo, breakfast for learning, computer program, gardening program, environment program. So I'm looking at all these here: proper nutrition, sexuality, injury prevention. Maybe some pamphlets out by the government to some YMCAs. They're getting involved in all those organizations. So, I mean, you know, I think that there's some good aspects of this bill, Madam Speaker, you know. But, I mean, also the Provincial Health Council was disbanded. And when that was disbanded, there was $348,000 in that was diverted to community health boards. I think that money should have been looked at, given in the health promotion. All those extra dollars to keep our kids active and healthy. I mean, you know. Well, I'm glad to hear that. I hear the minister says we are involved in that, but I'm glad to see. So I'm glad to see that. You know, Madam Speaker, I just think that overall, I think we will support this bill, but there is some things in this bill, and like I said before, and I'll stress this fact, you know, I'd rather see less bureaucracy and communications and actual the money going to where it's needed with the youth of our communities here in Nova Scotia. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member from Glace Bay.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm pleased to stand and speak for just a few minutes, Madam Speaker, on Bill number 46, the Public Service Act. Madam Speaker, this is a bill that has been about a year in the making, and the bill makes up a rather integral part of our healthcare system, a component, actually, of our healthcare system that this government did not see fit to recognize as a crucial component or important, didn't even recognize it as being important until we in the Liberal caucus started to talk about it. Then all of a sudden, it becomes an important issue, Madam Speaker. And like any of the good ideas put forward by this government, they've come from others, Madam Speaker, which is not necessarily a bad thing, as long as the intention goes beyond public relations aspect of just creating the department. Madam Speaker, there must be a budget for this department to begin to address the multifaceted aspects of health promotion. It's not sufficient just to put together the budgets of sport and recreation and tobacco control and certain components of population health within the department and say, there, we're done. That's not sufficient, Madam Speaker, in this case. If health promotion is going to be a priority, then they need the dollars to ensure the success of that department would follow. And spending dollars, Madam Speaker, cannot be done without a plan. So there needs to be a plan in place to address all of the components of health promotion, and that plan needs to be legislated so that this government can be held accountable for that plan. What has to follow, Madam Speaker, is a Health Promotion Act. That's what's needed. And I stress that the creation of this act would be developed with the cooperation of all of the key players involved in the delivery of health promotion programs in this province. There has to be a concerted effort to ensure that the chronic disease prevention strategy is given priority and also given resources. Madam Speaker, we've been hearing for 4 years now that a chronic disease prevention strategy is imminent. Yet we've heard nothing in terms of any commitment towards that from this government. Madam Speaker, let me give you an example of how this government can make health promotion a priority. Last month, the Minister of Health Promotion was the one who announced a cigarette tax increase, an announcement that's usually reserved for the Minister of Finance. Increasing taxes on tobaccos is usually done by the Minister of Finance, usually part of a budget, Madam Speaker. Well, if this government is serious about health promotion, then the minister, Madam Speaker, at the same time would have announced an earmarking of some of those anticipated revenues that should be going for health promotion purposes from the Tobacco Tax Act. But we've yet to hear whether this will become the case. So, Madam Speaker, we as a caucus here have requested that the money be used for health promotion purposes, not just go into general revenues. And in the spirit of what I talked about earlier, which is incorporating good ideas from political parties, then I encourage the minister and I encourage this government to do so, to make a significant contribution to health promotion programs as a result of that increased revenue from cigarette taxes. Madam Speaker, I suggest that would make common sense. In closing, Madam Speaker, this is an issue which, in our opinion, is far too important to be treated just as window dressing. We look forward to hearing from all the other interested parties through the law amendments process about their interest in holding this government accountable to a vision and a plan for health promotion, but more importantly, a budget that will ensure that that plan will be executed, Madam Speaker. What we don't want to see is just a piece of paper that establishes an Office of Health Promotion. And with that, Madam Speaker, I will take my place.
The honourable member from Halifax-Needham.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I'm very pleased to have an opportunity to stand and speak on second reading here on Bill 46, which is an amendment to the Public Service Act, which will allow the government to establish an Office of Health Promotion. For people who haven't sort of followed this issue, I think it's important that the record reflect that last year in the spring, the government announced their intention to establish this office. And that announcement took place in my constituency in Halifax-Needham. The Honourable Minister, I believe, was there along with the Premier and the former Minister of Health, the former Minister of Education, or the current Minister of Education, and perhaps at least one other minister. And members of my constituency certainly participated in that announcement at the George Dixon Centre in the north end of Halifax, which is a very active community centre for mostly young people, children and youth. A lot of recreational services and programs go on in that community centre that is operated by the Halifax Regional Municipality and has a very good relationship with the Sports and Recreation Commission in the province of Nova Scotia, for which people in my community are very, very grateful and very pleased. I look at this bill, and certainly am very much in support of the direction that the government have laid out here and the minister has laid out here. I think the wording is interesting in that the purpose of the office is described as attempting to promote a culture of good health and general preventative health measures. And I think that's an issue that needs to be explored and examined a lot more. I mean, culture is an interesting phenomenon. Often when we think of culture, we think of arts and music, but actually I think certainly in a province like Nova Scotia with a very rich historical tradition and many different diverse cultures that make up our community, we know that this means a lot of different ideas and practices and arrangements and beliefs, and these things, once they're established, often aren't that easy to change. So the challenge that the Office of Health Promotion has in a province where we have some of the worst rates of chronic disease is not, it's not an easy challenge in many respects. And I know that the colleagues in the third party, the Liberal Party, would like to take credit for this idea, but I also think it's really important to say that, you know, there was a Royal Commission on Health Care in Nova Scotia that really examined the healthcare system and the fact that we were continuing to build large acute care facilities and the health status of Nova Scotians weren't improved in spite of the fact that we continued to spend the largest part of our financial resources annually, Madam Speaker, on health care. And really the recommendations out of that Royal Commission that were worked on by the Blueprint Committee was that government needed to rethink and to spend more time and more of its efforts and more of its resources looking at prevention, looking at dealing with improving the health status of Nova Scotians so we weren't constantly having to spend dollars for chronic illness. And I think that this is the intent of this legislation. Now, having said that, last year when the office was announced, certainly myself and members of our caucus were really concerned that there was so little resources actually allocated to the important work that's going to be required in this department, or in this office. It's not a department. There were parts of the Department of Health, such as the tobacco control strategy or the tobacco control unit, that were moved from the Department of Health into the Office of Health Prevention and Addiction Services were moved. But just moving pieces of existing infrastructure from the Department of Health into the Office of Health Promotion is not enough, Madam Speaker. What we really need to see to make this office successful is an infusion of some additional and some new resources, not just a hiving away of existing resources in the Department of Health. So we really are going to be looking forward to the budget later on this week to actually see that this government is serious about advancing the health status of Nova Scotians and really having the necessary tools to promote a change in culture that will result in good health in Nova Scotia. Madam Speaker, when I look at the specific areas that this government lays out as being the major areas that health promotion or the Office of Health Promotion will focus on, they talk about healthy living, addiction prevention, including problem drinking and problem gambling. They talk about tobacco control, physical activity, proper nutrition, healthy sexuality, and injury prevention. Now, I'd like to speak briefly to some of these areas where this government still has a fair ways to go. And also to point out to the minister that there are some contradictions in the government's behavior so far. Tobacco control. We have seen a Smoke-Free Places Act introduced by this government that in fact continues to allow smoking in many public places, that continues to allow workplaces, specifically many bars and restaurants, to in fact have smoking go on in particular designated spaces or during particular times. And the workers who work inside those designated areas or at that time are exposed to secondhand smoke. And this was a concern we had with the government's legislation, and it's a concern we continue to have, and it is something that I'm hoping that this Office of Health Promotion will take seriously as a health promotion plan is developed to promote a culture of good health. The government had an opportunity to protect the health of workers, in other words, Madam Speaker, and they didn't take that opportunity when they had it. And the measures that were put in place were, to date, half-hearted and half measures. So this is something that somebody needs to address, and if this government won't address it, then some other government in the future will have to address it.
Introduction?
Sure.
From Preston?
Thank you. In the West Galleries, more members of the Boundary Action Reversal Committee, and I would ask them to stand as I read their name. It's Reverend Wayne Desmond, Merlin Riley, Joyce Riley, Marva Welsh Wiley, Irma Pope, Rick Pope, Brenda Downey, John Harlow, Marie Harlow, and David Sparks. And I'd ask the House to give them a warm welcome.
Certainly welcome everybody here today and hope that they enjoy their time spent here. And back to Honourable Member from Halifax Needham on Bill 46.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. So I too would like to welcome members in the gallery, and I'd like to continue this discussion on the Public Service Act to establish the Office of Health Promotion, Bill 46. So I was pointing out that the government had an opportunity to protect the health and safety of workers in certain industries, specifically the bars and restaurant industry, and that was an opportunity that they failed to live up to in terms of promoting health. And so there does seem to be a bit of a contradiction in what the government likes to tell people they're doing and the reality of what they're doing when you examine more closely what it is that their actions tell us. This government has indicated in this legislation that addiction prevention is of concern to them, including problem drinking and problem gambling. Some of the reports that we have seen recently about the current examination of video gambling, the possibility of online video gambling, the introduction of changes in the technology that will allow video gambling to become more lucrative to the gambling authority, but also possibly more addictive to the people who engage in gambling, is certainly a concern and appears to be in somewhat of a contradiction to the stated goals and objectives of the Office of Health Promotion. And I think it would be really important to have the minister talk about what the concrete plans are of this government are with respect to reducing the rates of problem gambling in Nova Scotia. You know, Madam Speaker, not very long ago, a few weeks ago, there was a press conference on the 24th of March out at Mount St. Vincent, where a group of researchers who are part of the Atlantic Health Promotion Research Center released their findings from Phase 1 and Phase 2 of a participatory research project on food security in Nova Scotia. In other words, their research was looking at how much income a family would require to meet the nutritional requirements as set out in Canada's Food Guide. And the groups that are participating in this research are the Nova Scotia Nutrition Council, the children-funded Nova Scotia Family Resource Centers, the Canada Prenatal Nutrition Program and Community Action Programs, and the Atlantic Health Promotion Research Center. And I was able to attend that press conference, as were many other people. And I think we were all quite startled at the findings from this research, because it demonstrated that there is a growing number of families in our province, both lone parent-headed families, but also working, dual parent working families whose incomes are so fundamentally inadequate because of the low rate of salary due to minimum wage or other fixed income supplements, that they are unable to eat nutritionally. Now this particular bill, Bill 46, setting up the Office of Health Promotion, says that one of the things, and the minister spoke to this, one of the areas of concern for this office is proper nutrition. And I would say to the minister that it would be very important for him, if he isn't aware of this research, to become aware of this research so that he could understand the absolute struggle that many families are having to maintain a nutritional adequate diet for themselves and their children. And this is research that has been conducted in an objective and I think quite a legitimate way that demonstrates that we have some serious problems in Nova Scotia with respect to people being able to get adequate nutrition. And in a way, this should come as no surprise. Certainly to some of us, I mean, my background is in social work, so I'm not surprised by this. I'm not surprised because, you know, the Liberal government in 1993 froze the rates of social assistance in Nova Scotia so that for more than 10 years, families who, the rate of payment that are given to a family today for food is what it was in 1993. So does this surprise people then that families who are living in poverty are unable to afford an adequate nutritional diet? It's no surprise. And this government has been in power now for a number of years. They had an opportunity to address that whole situation when they brought in the new income security program, and they failed to do that. They didn't address this problem, and they've allowed it to continue to occur, and the result is the findings in this study. So I think that, you know, these are questions that need to be asked, and they need to have discussion, and they need to have some serious plan for addressing. Madam Speaker, I had indicated that in this province we have some of the highest rates of chronic disease in the country. High rates of heart disease, high blood pressure, diabetes, cancer. We have a chronic disease prevention strategy. We hear very little about the government's plan to put into action the features that will help us develop the response to chronic disease prevention. And this is an area that is of some urgency for a whole variety of reasons, because chronic diseases place quite a heavy burden on our acute care healthcare system. So the more that we can do to prevent the development of chronic disease, the better. I think it's a very important thing that we need to look at. I know that one of the standing committees had the Heart and Stroke Society in front of us talking about other places in the world where they have, specifically Finland, I believe, where they had developed a very comprehensive strategy and action plan to improve the health of the population and to reduce chronic disease. And in a very short period of time, actually, they were able to see the health status of the population improve using population health interventions. And I think this is very much something that we need here in Nova Scotia. But I think that it's clear, and so much of the research has told us that the determinants of health, people's incomes, whether or not they live in poverty, whether or not they have adequate housing, whether or not they've got a job that pays a decent salary, whether or not they've got some control in the workplace over their employment, whether or not their children are adequately taken care of in adequate childcare, the amount of stress that people are under. These are all features of whether or not you are going to be well, whether or not you're going to be healthy, whether or not you're going to be able to have the kind of lifestyle and to make the lifestyle choices that will lead to better health. And, you know, I think about this government's strategy in terms of economic development. You know, call centers. Investing in call centers where people sit for long periods of time in front of video screens. They have very little control over their work. They aren't the highest paid jobs, and they're subject to real insecurity in terms of whether or not that call center is going to stay around and whether or not there's going to be regular employment because the contracts are coming into the call centers. I mean, in many ways, the choices that the government has made has been a low-wage, insecure kind of workplace strategy in this province, and this does not bode well, I think, for healthy lifestyle choices and being able to promote a different culture. If anything, we're creating a bit of a rat race culture and the race to the bottom. So although this is somewhat outside of the scope of the bill, you have to look at what this government wants to do with this particular piece of legislation in the context of what else is occurring. So I don't have a great deal more to say with respect to this bill. I mean, obviously it is important that we codify in law the Office of Health Promotion. It's been a long time coming in many ways. If you go back and you think about how long ago it's been since we've had the Royal Commission on Health in Nova Scotia, that must go back, well, I would think that it goes back a good deal more than 10 years. And, you know, so this is not rocket science. This is something that we've known needed to be done for a long time. The fact that it's happening now is good. The fact that it took us so long to get to this point is not so good. And let's hope that it doesn't take 10 years before we have a plan. And let's hope that it doesn't take 10 years before we have the adequate resources to actually put a plan into operation so that we see those rates of chronic disease start to fall in our province. We see the health status of our population start to improve. And the real test for this legislation will be when we start to see the resources that are given to this particular office and whether or not there are new resources being injected into the work of this office or whether there's merely a transfer of resources from the previous Department of Health and maybe some other departments, possibly Education, the Sports and Recreation Commission or something like that, into this office. We want to see real resources for real change. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Halifax Citadel.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And it's a pleasure to rise on this occasion to speak in relation to Bill 46. The member from Richmond turned to me just a short time ago, Madam Speaker, and said that this is the day for me to get a lot off my chest. First, with the Premier's announcement about the rescinding of a part of the tax cut, and today to have the opportunity to have health promotion on as a matter of some discussion. And I understand that the draw went to a question of whether or not the tax cut is appropriate for late debate today. And I look forward to the opportunity to speak on that at that time. When I first prepared my remarks for this topic, you can appreciate that much of it was sprinkled with references to the choices that government has to make, the choices that it makes with respect to the tax cut. I signaled earlier today that this is a good day for Nova Scotia with respect to the tax cut. We see it as a step forward, but I think that for many Nova Scotians, they feel that they may have been duped and that this raises questions of competence overall. But for doing the right thing, the government deserves credit. Even if it is a partial step, and it will be interesting to note what the details of the rescinded tax cut ultimately turn out to be. Madam Speaker, either something is important to us and we commit ourselves to it, or it is not. And I've often asked the question, what could be more important than the health of our people? What could be more important than the health of our children, our parents, our friends, and our neighbors? Perhaps nothing. So if something is that important, we need to examine whether or not we in Nova Scotia are doing well with respect to that. The member from Halifax Needham and others have pointed out the chronic problems in Nova Scotia, and I'd like to refer to those. But this ultimately is a question of making choices. We have a significant problem in Nova Scotia with respect to the health of the population, and I think one of the most important things for us to do, and I will attempt to do at the end of my remarks, is connect the notion that good health means a good economy, that a good health means for strong communities, that good health means for better education. Good health at the bottom line means that Nova Scotia will be a stronger, prouder, better province. And for too long we have forsaken these vision pieces for short-term carrots. Many will repeat, as I will repeat, the challenges with respect to health in Nova Scotia, but I can say, as I've said on a number of occasions, that it was one of the principal motivators for me to get involved in public life. When we read that in our province, our proud Nova Scotia, we have the highest rate of death from cancer. We have the highest rate of death from respiratory disease. We have the second highest rate of death from lung cancer, the second highest rate of death from circulatory problems. We have the highest rate of several preventable chronic diseases, the highest reported number of disability days in Canada. Nova Scotians developed a health disability at an earlier age and suffer with it longer than do other Canadians. What kind of a Nova Scotia do we want to grow up in? That's the problem that faces us. And what's the cause of the problem? It's not the Conservatives. They didn't cause this problem. We all share responsibility for the problems that we find ourselves in. But they have responsibility for finding solutions and leading us through with some vision and direction and acting on it in a way that is meaningful to Nova Scotians, not with the glacial speed, with the greatest respect that they have acted on this issue of health promotion. The cause of this problem, and there is a risk of oversimplifying it, comes from inactivity, it comes from heavy smoking, it comes from the culture that this bill, in fairness, attempts to address. But let's consider some of the issues that we face in Nova Scotia. We are amongst the least active Canadians, period. Nearly twice as many youth in the province of Saskatchewan, which has about the same population as us, are involved in sport as our province of Nova Scotia. Saskatchewan spends 5 times as much as we do on sport development. It's also interesting to note, Madam Speaker, that in this province of Nova Scotia, when you do the math, the government takes more money out of sport in taxes than it actually invests back in sport for development. How bizarre and how twisted is that? That we take more money out of sport in taxes than we actually use to promote it through better activity and more activity, especially amongst our young people. Where are our priorities? Our rate of obesity is the second highest of any province in the country. And our smoking problems, which, as the minister responsible for health promotion would point out, have been improving over the last 12 months, it would appear, they still remain remarkably higher than in other parts of the province, other parts of the country. So what's the solution? The solution is in mustering the political will, the insight, the courage, the money to champion the cause of health promotion. Provinces and states all around the world have been successfully taking up the challenge of health promotion. The member from Halifax Needham made reference to a project or an initiative in Finland. It's actually in North Karelia, where the government of that province took on the serious challenges that were facing the population in North Karelia and made significant advancements as a result of putting resources behind this, as a result of not just talking about this issue, but having a vision and having a plan and moving it forward, a clear vision. And what's the Nova Scotia solution? It was interesting to note that the member from Halifax Needham made some reference to the fact that the Liberal Party likes to take credit for raising the issue of health promotion. Madam Speaker, it's hardly so. When you look at the work of the Nova Scotia Cancer Society, when you look at the work of the the Heart and Stroke Foundation of Nova Scotia, Sport Nova Scotia, those are the people who've kept this issue alive. Those are the people who have continued to press it forward. But I will say this, that it was only the Liberal Party that brought this issue forward to the front burner and not the back burner of the political will in this province. So where do we go? We find ourselves last year with the announcement in December of 2002 of the Office of Health Promotion, with an office at that time without a budget, without a lead, without even an office. They didn't even have a nameplate on the door to call themselves the Office of Health Promotion. And at the time, the minister will recall this, the Conservative government was accused of hijacking a priority of the Liberal government. And in response to that, the Premier and the Minister said, no, we're serious about this and we're going to take action. Madam Speaker, that was 16 months ago. 16 months ago, they didn't come forward in the spring of 2003 with this simple piece of legislation. They didn't come forward in the fall of 2003 with this simple piece of legislation. It has taken them 16 months to come forward with something this straightforward, which still doesn't get the ball moving. It establishes a framework into which we try to move this ball forward. That kind of leadership is a betrayal of the promises that they made to Nova Scotia when they first announced this in December in 2002, and clearly reveals that at the time that this announcement was made, it was a political ploy. It was intended to take the issue of health promotion away from the Liberal Party, where we had tried to put it more and more on the front burner. We continue to try to do this, and we will press this government to actually take action. We applaud them for appointing the executive director who they have. The former head of the Sport Nova Scotia, someone who truly has vision. But unless he has the resources to chart out that vision, it's not going to go anywhere. The first announcement that the minister responsible for the Office of Health Promotion made was that approximately $4 million for last year's budget was going to be taken from those who smoke in Nova Scotia. It's not something that we objected to, because we accept the notion that when smoking prices increase, the use of cigarettes decreases. But every cent of that went to the general revenues of this province. Not a single cent from that original $4 million went to promote health. Not a cent. So we look back to the announcements that were made, and I see the former Minister of Health making some comments, and I would like to speak about the establishment, wait till Thursday, I'm being told by the former Minister of Health, and I'm encouraged by that. But let's consider the ominous mountain that the finance minister will have to overcome when one considers it in the following context. On April 5th, 2001, this government increased taxes for cigarettes in this province. And at the time, it's interesting to note what their promise was. They said a portion of the tax revenue will be used to support new programs planned as part of the strategy, and this is their smoking cessation strategy, to be released later this year. Health Minister Jamie Muir welcomed the announcement as another punch in the department's fight against smoking. On November 1st, 2001, still the same year, the government didn't have enough money, so they decided to tax smokers again. And in that release, on paragraph 2, the government said, the Nova Scotia government is raising tobacco taxes to help discouraging smoking. Next paragraph, the intent is to convince Nova Scotians to stop smoking or refuse to start. And then 2 paragraphs later, they continue, we quickly came to the consensus that raising tobacco taxes is the most effective tool in the fight against smoking. Fast forward to just a few months later, they still didn't have enough money, so on April 4th, 2002, they announced further increases. On January 8th, 2003, the government, still running short on dough, decides that they should raise money through increased cigarette taxes, and in paragraph 2 of that news release says, we are committed to creating a healthier province by reducing our high rate of smoking, particularly among our youth. Increasing the price of tobacco is an important part of our overall strategy to help Nova Scotians live healthier, live healthier, and have smoke-free lives. No argument with that, Madam Speaker. March 16th, 2004, yet again, the province increases the price of cigarettes. And on that occasion, first 2 paragraphs start, the province is taking another step to curb tobacco use in Nova Scotia by implementing a tobacco tax increase. Reducing tobacco use continues to be a priority for this government as we fulfill our commitment to improve the health of Nova Scotians. Madam Speaker, anyone who listens to that wouldn't fully appreciate that through those increases since this government has taken power, they have taken $90 million more through increased tax revenue from cigarettes. $90 million more dollars. And on each occasion when they did it, it's curious to note that they always spoke about health promotion. So surely most of that $90 million went to health promotion. In fact, it didn't. Madam Speaker, less than $2 million of that money went to health promotion. The rest of it went to tax cuts, wastes and needs that this government seems to be out of step with Nova Scotians on. Where is the commitment to health promotion? How much of the remaining $88 million could have been put to good use to really address what's important for Nova Scotians? Most or all of it, I would suggest. So where are our priorities? What is important? Is it the health of our citizens? Or is it now still $60 million worth of tax cuts? Is it the problem that our children face in not having access to sports, to sex education, through the kinds of programs that the Cape Breton Wellness Program put together? Now, for anyone who wasn't following, the Cape Breton Wellness Centre is a center that received a leadership award for women's health in Atlantic Canada from the Atlantic Centre of Excellence in Women's Health. They've undertaken several significant and positive programs. They've initiated a healthy school food policy. They've screened women's accessing cervical cancer. They've explored how recent coal mining closures are affecting the health of the people living in Cape Breton. It's interesting to note, Madam Speaker, that by all national standards, the people in Cape Breton suffer perhaps as badly as almost anyone and need the support of a center like this. They've established the Cape Breton Wellness Center bikeways, pathways, green spaces. They've spoken about the needs of post-rehabilitation for cardiac patients. They've talked about the economy and health projects. What has this government done with respect to the measly $150,000 worth of funding that they used to receive from this provincial government? 2 years ago, they cut it off. And despite the badgering that has been placed at the feet of the Department of Health and the Department of Health Promotion, none of it appears to have gone back in to that center. Is it a priority or is it not? Are you going to walk the talk or are you only going to talk the talk with respect to health promotion? Are you going to put before this legislature a piece of legislation that only establishes finally an office 16 months later, or are you going to actually do something? Are you going to put your money towards this? Now I can see from the signals that I'm getting from the Minister of Education, and he's referring to the Minister of Health beside him, that something's going to be done in this budget and it's welcome to be done. But what will you have done with the $88 million that is already there, that has already come from tax promotion? Will that go into these types of programs? And I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the programs, Madam Speaker, that should be considered. We have, with respect to smoking, because I've placed some emphasis on that, the issue of whether or not the patch should be more available, Zyban, whether or not there should be more physical education in our schools, whether or not, for example, we should finally start a Healthy Starts program. This government, like health promotion, has paid lip service to the issue of health promotion. All the research tells us that the most important formative years of our lives happen from a prenatal period to grade primary. And that is the time at which we should be focusing all of our attention and money. Now, this government, at one time, when I first arrived on the scene 2 years ago, was spending what they touted as a Healthy Starts program, $9 or $10 million towards Healthy Starts, and tried to rebut our suggestion that they need more of a commitment to this. Well, in fact, we learned that almost all of that money was federal money. And in terms of putting together a comprehensive Healthy Starts program, in the way that they started it in Hawaii, really committing ourselves to actually making sure that our tots and our preschoolers are having a leg up. requires a commitment of resources. Those are the kinds of ideas that this government should be committing itself, fully funding the issue of kids sport that undoubtedly the minister responsible for health promotion is fully aware of. We know that this is a multifaceted problem. My background is with the criminal justice system, in particular with youth justice. And in the time as a policy worker that I was working on trying to advance the issues of youth justice, I was amazed at the number of times that I would read reports that didn't have the political will but made complete sense about how we need to connect the dots about healthy people, better educated people, and a healthy, strong economy. Those are issues that we need to begin to connect the dots on, or we as a province are going to continue to languish when it comes to the importance of social issues, the importance of economic issues. These are the challenges that face us. Health promotion is hopefully on the front burner, and it will stay on the front burner for a long period of time. 13% of our gross domestic product in this province is spent on chronic illness, and 40% of chronic illness is preventable. Recently, the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives spoke about all of the challenges that we face as a province. Nobody is pretending that this is easy stuff. But the bottom line is that the pretense must end, that smoking cessation programs need to be properly funded, that health promotion and wellness in this province needs to actually be put into action, and that the tax dollars that are taken from Nova Scotians on the pretense of health promotion need to be put straight back into health promotion, or keep quiet about whether you're truly committed to this issue. In this province, Madam Speaker, we've had too much of a history of dangling a short-term carrot. One has to think clearly of the $155 check that was spent last year, and forsaking long-term vision. Long-term vision is what this province needs, and it needs it most importantly when it comes to the health of our citizens. At the end of the day, nothing could be more important than the health of Nova Scotians. Thank you very much.
The honourable member from Dartmouth South, Portland Valley.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm really pleased to have this opportunity to speak to the amendment to establish the Office of Health Promotion, Bill 46. And while I applaud the government's interest in health promotion, I do have some concerns about this particular bill. I think my first concern is that the bill seems to encourage a very narrow definition of health promotion. And I must say that I actually was prompted or motivated to run for office because of my longtime interest in building healthy communities. And I'm interested to see as one of the responsibilities injury prevention, because my former organization, Community Links, was actually the lead on the provincial initiative to develop a strategy on preventing falls among seniors and injury prevention in general. So this is an issue that's very near and dear to my heart. My concern is that the focus in the Act seems to be on individual health promotion practices and lifestyle choices. And while perhaps 10, 15 years ago this was seen as the way to go, research seems to indicate these days that you have to take a much broader approach to all the factors that affect a person and a community and a province's health. Earlier speakers have talked about the determinants of health. And we know that the level of education, your physical environment, your social environment, your level of income, child development, culture, your gender, all these things have a tremendous impact on your health status. In fact, you might be interested to know that middle-income earners are actually twice as healthy as low-income earners, and high-income earners are twice as healthy as middle-income earners. So that just shows you the impact of having discretionary funds and the options that they provide to a person has on your health. So it's a very narrow view to just talk about healthy living, addiction prevention, tobacco control, physical activity, proper nutrition, healthy sexuality, and injury prevention, without looking at these broader concerns. I'm also worried that the narrow definition may be a way for the government to justify spending such a small percentage of the health budget on health promotion. 4% is not going to provide the long-term broad sector interaction of health promotion activities and strategies that are going to be required. Talking a little more about the determinants of health, I have a school in my community that has the exhaust for a dry cleaners coming into its playground, and it's across the street from an oil refinery and a propane exchange unit. And I'd like to suggest that adding perhaps a half hour of activity to that student population's schedule, or providing the early morning breakfast program alone is not going to have a terrific impact on their health status. So it's no surprise that this particular school population has a very high incidence of asthma. You have to work on a number of these factors together. I want to suggest that it would be easy with a narrow definition of health promotion to be able to place the blame on the victim or the individual, and suggest that their ill health is actually due to their own particular lifestyle choices. And it's much more complex and much more broad than that. So I would like to see the Office of Health Promotion being given responsibility for taking a broader sort of population-based approach in government. I know in some provinces they actually have a cross-sectorial or cross-department committee that looks at collaboration, looks at new initiatives, looks at all the new policies and legislation coming in, and provides sort of a health screen. They check to see what the impact will be on the health of the province before that legislation is introduced into the legislature or the policy is changed. And I would like to suggest that that kind of healthy public policy lens would have a much greater impact on improving health for Nova Scotians than any single action that could be taken by an individual department. I would really like to encourage the government to look at providing that kind of screen for its legislation and policies. It would have a much greater impact on the quality of life of Nova Scotians. Things such as, it was interesting for me to read that in Newfoundland, the residents of Newfoundland and Labrador actually rate their health much higher than Nova Scotians. And the explanation given is because they sense a strong community and family support system in place. And they feel protected and supported by the strong sense of community and their strong sense of family in Newfoundland and Labrador. And they recognize the importance of that in maintaining their health status. So they rate themselves actually much healthier than they do in Nova Scotia. But we need to be looking at a number of different issues: affordable and safe housing, decreasing the income gap, giving people a better sense of control over their life and employment. We need to be looking at fairness and equality, social inclusion and safety, both personally as an individual and within a community. These much broader determinants will have a much greater impact than some of the individual items being listed here as the responsibility of the Office of Health Promotion. I agree with the earlier speakers that we have an extremely high rate of chronic disease, disability, and death in Nova Scotia. And we're not going to have any impact on that until we invest many more dollars and much more time and energy on broad health promotion strategies in this province. Ever since the Royal Commission on Healthcare report came in I think it was 1989, we have known that we almost have to double fund our acute care and rehabilitation care system in Nova Scotia. that until we add significant new dollars to health promotion, we're not going to be able to slow down the expenditures, health expenditures on acute and rehabilitation care. So if we want to be serious about this, there's almost a bottomless pit that we can continue to pour the taxpayers' dollars in to treat people after they become injured or after they become ill. Until we turn that around and promote safety, promote health and wellness, we're not going to be able to decrease that bottomless pit into which our tax dollars are going. We have many examples around the world. Australia, North Korea project. These are all long-term projects that have shown significant benefits for their citizens. So there are models out there in the rest of the world that we can follow, and I would really encourage our government to take seriously what has worked well in other areas. We can learn from what and be very efficient in terms of using our tax dollars, public money. So I do want to suggest it's certainly time that the Office of Health Promotion has been made official. I would encourage the government to put significant more money into its operation, and I would strongly recommend that the priority change from a narrow focus on things such as physical activity and some of these other sort of personal lifestyle choices, and embrace the much broader population health approach that has worked so successfully in other countries and would really make a serious dent in the high rate of chronic disease, disability, and death in Nova Scotia. Thank you.
The honourable member from Victoria the Lakes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'm pleased to stand and speak for a few moments on Bill 46, and not to bash anyone, Madam Speaker, but to agree wholeheartedly that the time has come when we realize that what we're doing is not working, then it's time to change what we are doing. And a change of lifestyle is a long time overdue. I'd like to point to the fact that of the young gentleman from Middle River, Daniel Canning, that I referenced the other day, who at 16 years of age has won himself a national championship in weightlifting by following an active lifestyle and training himself in the meager surroundings that he has without a professional gymnasium or any professional training, but being active, staying clean, and away from smoking and drugs. If it can work for him, he's an example for youth. It can work for everyone. Bulletree Elementary School, I was fortunate to have a community there who thought it would be good to introduce a karate program, which we did for the youth, and it's working very well. The children are active not only during recess hours, but immediately after school, Madam Speaker. Tobacco control, the taxes for it, the money that's gained, Madam Speaker, that's additional money. So rather than taking it, and as we heard other speakers say, put it into the general coffers, I applaud the fact that hopefully, I'm looking forward to Thursday when the budget comes down, that this money will be put in as specifically for what it's intended for. Give health promotion a priority, and it'll be amazing over a period of time. You heard reference to North Korea. I think that process took 15 years. I was made aware of that by my contacts with the Nova Scotia Heart and Stroke Foundation, and how it took a 15-year time to evolve to get to where they are today. And the plan needs to be put into place to address all the components of health promotion and have it legislated into government so that the program can be accountable. There will be resistance, Madam Speaker, to active living. People get lazy. They'd rather lay on the couch, have a cigarette, eat excessively, So you are going to get resistance to that. But on the other side of the small amount of resistance will be meager when compared to the actual results that we will gain. Chronic disease prevention strategy, if it's given a priority, we'll need to educate people away from medication and a sedentary lifestyle. And that's for their own benefits. It's nice to go to the doctor. I'll use myself as an example. Once a year, get a checkup. The first thing they say is, what medication are you on? And you can answer none. And they kind of look rather surprised. Maybe there's times throughout the day that in this House a person should be on medication. I'm not sure, Madam Speaker. But the additional dollars that will be gained, I would really like to see results for it. And I'm looking forward to that. And I can't reiterate enough that I don't want to see the monies go into general revenues. I'm looking forward to Thursday to the budget and hope that that money is earmarked for that. A significant contribution to health promotion, yes, we can change a negative into a positive. Cigarette taxes, most of us agree that smoking is bad. Well, let's take that taxes on that bad habit and change it into something positive. The GPI Atlantic study revealed in 2002 that chronic illness costing Nova Scotians more than $3 billion in medical costs and lost productivity. Active living will change that around. And just a few more statistics, Madam Speaker. If just 10% of Nova Scotians were physically active, the province could save an estimated $4.6 million in avoided hospital, drug, and physician costs, and $7.5 million in total economic gains. Active people are more productive. There's also an added estimated $17 million in productivity. Added all together, it comes up in the vicinity of $24.5 million, Madam Speaker. A lot of money that could be used for a lot better things than having somebody laying on a Chesterfield, smoking and eating excessively. So, Madam Speaker, I'm looking forward to this bill going to law amendments so that we can have the input from other interested parties. And more importantly, I'm looking forward that the budget will ensure that this plan can be executed. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member from Halifax Atlantic.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We all seem to be very grateful for the opportunity to welcome this bill into the legislature, and I think it's because a great many of us look at issues that arise as health promotion issues. More and more frequently, I find myself saying of what presents itself as a crisis health issue, really, it is a health promotion issue. So I'm very, very, very glad to see this overture, and I'm looking forward to the work itself. As has been pointed out by a number of people, Nova Scotia has an existing culture which is not to be envied. Very high cancer rates, respiratory disease, and the highest disability rate at 20.6 of any province in Canada. Health Canada has just released a report, which I will table for later reference, entitled The Tides of Change, Addressing Inequity and Chronic Disease in Atlantic Canada. And I think that again is promoting health promotion is something which we must do. In that report, the quote is made that social determinants of health and disease are political matters beyond the physician's purview, and medicine is a social science, and politics is nothing more than medicine on a large scale. Those words were written in 1842. We have been delaying for some time. I would hope that in the implementation of the Office of Health Promotion, that we will take a broad view of the parameters which have been set forth. Nutrition is, as we know, something very difficult to achieve on a limited budget. We need to look at the limited budget. Injury prevention and disease prevention, both can be viewed at least partly as functions of stress. As the developing science of psychoneuroimmunology clarifies that immune function is severely depressed by stress. Mental health promotion is at least as important as any of the other forms that we can take. And as I have pointed out most recently, The incidence of postpartum depression is highly correlated with incidence of child depression, and suicide rates are climbing amongst children between the ages of 6 and 12. We cannot afford to ignore this aspect of health promotion. Perhaps what's needed is a sleep strategy, and at this time I say it less jokingly than ever before. Smoking rates are highest amongst those diagnosed with mental health issues. This is something as well which needs to be addressed before we go at it. And I would like to add a single comment on the culture of physical inactivity. I have long heard and been very uncomfortable with the term elite athlete. It is a very important thing that we encourage sport amongst young people. It is equally important that we encourage physical activity without expectation of elite accomplishment amongst all of our population. And that is something that can be done by using the health promotion filter to look at every enactment this government passes. Thank you very much.
Chair recognizes the honourable member from Dartmouth East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm not going to speak too long on this. I think when I was sitting up there and listening to everybody speak, there was a lot of good information came out, and I certainly enjoyed listening to everybody's comments. I learned a lot in the time that I was just sitting up in the chair, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I would like to talk about a couple of issues that I'm aware of. Recently, the Dartmouth Community Health Board held a consultation in our community, and that was attended by 130 citizens, 47 community organizations and groups, MLAs, and our federal MP, and some of our municipal councillors. A lot of issues were brought forward due to that evening of consultation, and they fell into 4 general themes. One was a sustainable funding and sustainable support for community programs and services. The second issue was communication and coordination between groups, including Capital Health and the Dartmouth Community Health Boards. The third issue was communication and coordination between groups and the general public. And the fourth issue was health promotion activities, including nutrition, physical activity, and healthy lifestyle choices. So number 4 actually is the issue that sort of stuck out for me there, Mr. Speaker, when I was reading this document. Mr. Speaker, I will go to page 15 of the Dartmouth Community Health Board's Community Consultation Report to the Capital Health. In that, they strongly support a number of health promotion initiatives, and they're targeted some of them are targeted toward tobacco control and youth health. Mr. Speaker, some of the issues they've listed below here are nutrition. And excuse me for reading directly from the script, but I haven't had a lot of time to prepare my own notes today. Poor nutritional habits and inadequate access to healthy food choices are impacting individual and family health. Physical activity. Members of our community understand the value of physical activity for all age groups and have expressed a desire to find more opportunities for physical activity to promote their own health and well-being. Social isolation was another point brought up. Social isolation creates a barrier to achieving community and individual health. It should be noted here that the impact of social isolation, while common in the seniors' age bracket, is felt across all demographics. Mr. Speaker, on page 16, they point out that poverty is a major factor affecting the health and well-being of many individuals and families in Dartmouth. Though this concern is immense and flows into the jurisdictions of many areas of authority, Capital Health cannot ignore the impact it has on the individual and the family health. Primary care was listed. Primary health care and the initiatives underway to develop closer-to-home delivery and intervention systems are key. They did speak to some direct action recommendations, and one of them was to increase support for the development, development of additional cooperative service deliveries with parent and family resource centers in the Dartmouth area. They will continue to advocate, where possible, for increased restrictions around food marketing to children, and they'd like to see more opportunities to collaborate with school boards in the support of nutritional programs in schools. The Capital Health must advocate with its provincial and HRM stakeholder partners and organizations to create affordable opportunities for people to use recreational facilities and promote the need for green spaces. Mr. Speaker, in particular, my constituency, we do not have a recreational facility. We have Dartmouth East Boys and Girls Club that are right now operating out of 5 areas or places in the community that people have been kind enough to make available to them. So definitely there's an issue there. While attention needs to be placed on lifestyle factors that influence health, Capital Health should strongly advocate for healthy public policies. Mr. Speaker, another issue that came up recently in some articles in the newspaper was the connection now between the cancer rates and the use of chemicals. The Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives have done a study that points out the spectacular increases in the incidence of cancer over the past few decades. They're saying that this can't be explained primarily by genetics or lifestyle, such as diet or smoking, although these are big components of the big picture. They're saying that an even bigger culprit is chemical pollution in our food, air, water, and our workplace. They're saying, Mr. Speaker, that if this rate continues, stats show that we will have an epidemic of cancer in a few years. 40% of people now living will develop some form of cancer, and over half will die of it. These are very scary figures for someone to read. Nova Scotia, as we know, already has some of the highest incidence of cancer in the country, not to mention asthma and other diseases. When I hear people speaking today about all the different issues around promoting good health in the province, I believe what I'm hearing everyone saying is that we have to look at the bigger picture. And one of the big things that are in this big picture is the way that Nova Scotia is continuing to pollute the environment in which we live. Nova Scotia Power, in particular, is a grave concern as far as the health of Nova Scotians goes. They continue to make it into the top 10 polluters list every time that you see a list published. They're producing 84% of the province's air pollution, and you have to wonder, is there anything that can be done about this, Mr. Speaker? There are things that can be done, Mr. Speaker. Other provinces across the country and power companies are improving the efficiency by increasing incentives. New Brunswick Public Utility provides free inspections to homeowners. PEI's Maritime Electric does phone consultations with people, and they'll loan them a watt meter so they can determine how big of an energy user they are. They provide free inspections. Manitoba is far and beyond the other provinces. They do community efficiency workshops, provide loan and long-term payment options to people wanting to improve the efficiency on their homes. These are just a few of the things that we can be doing and that this government could be initiating and helping to move along. Other provinces encourage people to use renewable energy. For example, in Manitoba, extra energy produced by a farmer's wind turbine can be sold back to the Maritime Hydro's power grid. There's no incentive provided in this province for Nova Scotia Power to do these kinds of things. Mr. Speaker, I won't go on and on about the conditions in the province caused by Nova Scotia Power. I'd just like to say, yes, there are things that can be done in regards to this issue, and we can move towards a cleaner and a renewable energy source that will help us all in the long run as far as our health goes, Mr. Speaker, and therefore I will support the bill going forward, and definitely look forward to seeing what comes out in the end. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Recognize the Member from Dartmouth North.
Well, I thank you, Mr. Speaker, and it's always an opportunity to speak before legislation that's brought before this House. Today I'm speaking on a bill, Bill 46, which requires the establishment of the Office of Health Promotions. And Mr. Speaker, I want to tell you that it's a good day that finally we recognize that we are going to establish an Office of Health Promotions. I want to say, though, Mr. Speaker, as I stand in this legislative assembly, that I want to acknowledge the tremendous work done by my party's health critic, the honourable member for Halifax Needham. I also want to recognize the great contribution that's put forward by our honourable member of Dartmouth South Portland Valley. And the honourable members have brought some real good issues to this legislative assembly, which I know the minister responsible for health promotions has duly noted and made record of some of the points that they have brought forward and hopefully will address. Mr. Speaker, I want to talk about the Office of Health Promotion, although it is not established now. I want to talk about what will be the role of the health promotions. My hope is that the role of the Office of the Health Promotion will in fact be a department that in fact will seek information from other levels of other governmental department offices. And Mr. Speaker, I want to say to the Honourable Minister of Health Promotions that in fact this wide blanket that goes across all government departments is one in which the Honourable Minister will in fact look at with respect to seeking input from, because the Office of Health Promotions will have a significant impact on the Department of Education, what the Department of Education can do to promote health, obviously the Department of Health, but also the Department of Community Services and what can be done in the Department of Community Services to in fact bring about health promotions and lifestyles within the citizens of our community. And Mr. Speaker, I want to tell you that these are significantly important. There will also hopefully be conversations with the Gaming Foundation, who dispenses the dollars into the Department of Health, which will find itself moving forward to the Department of Health Promotions. And I do know that a private member's bill has just been introduced today, I believe, from the honourable member for Annapolis, which in fact is going to make a request. If in fact that private member's bill comes to the floor, we'll be making a request for 10% of the gaming revenues to be used in sport and recreation. So I do know that that is already a bill that's been put forward, and that's for another day of discussion, Mr. Speaker. But today, the importance of the Office of Health Promotion is to make sure that every Nova Scotian lives in a healthy province, and that every Nova Scotian has a healthy community in which Nova Scotians can live, and that every Nova Scotian, irrespective of their status within the province, will in fact benefit from the Office of Health Promotion. That, Mr. Speaker, to me is significantly important. And I do want to acknowledge the honourable member from Dartmouth East as well, who is the environment critic for the party, whom in fact has recognized that the environmental issues that in fact affect communities also affect the healthy well-being of Nova Scotians as well. And that the Office of Health Promotions will in fact have to work with all those departments in order to bring forward what this Office of Health Promotion recognizes as a truly comprehensive health program. Also, Mr. Speaker, it is my hope that when this Office of Health Promotion is in fact brought together, the foundation is there, that there is a CEO or a Chief Administrative Officer of the Office of Health Promotion, that there is a staff in place, that the Office of Health Promotion will guarantee and assure this legislative assembly that it will bring forward an annual report. Bring forward an annual report of the Office of the Health Promotion discussing the progress and the progress that has been made to date with respect to its initiatives and drives and promotions into the office of that department. Mr. Speaker, and I do know the Honourable Minister will make sure that that's an annual report that becomes to this legislative assembly. Because only by way of an annual report, Mr. Speaker, can we, as members of this legislative assembly, measure the performance of government and watch the outcomes with respect to this Office of Health Promotions. Mr. Speaker, I want to tell you that Bill 46 was in my mind on last Wednesday last Wednesday, excuse me, Mr. Speaker, when I attended a public meeting on youth concerns within the constituency of Dartmouth North. And I want to tell you, Mr. Speaker, that although this not only encompasses youth, it is a part of the Office of Health Promotions. And that in fact the youth in that community recognize that there were some serious deficiencies with respect to being able to get access to funding and money to be actively involved in programs in this community. You know, Mr. Speaker, that it even costs money to be involved in a gymnastics program in the school. And if you're not out there fundraising or being a part of that, and you live in a community where you cannot fundraise, then the bottom line is that you don't participate. And that, I'm sure, is not what the Office of Health Promotions wants to see happen. I'm sure that the Office of Health Promotion wants to make sure that those dollars are put in so that those individuals who live in the communities where in fact they are working poor and where in fact they're on fixed incomes and so on, rather they're youth or rather they're seniors, whatever level, that they are able to participate. And that my hope is, Mr. Speaker, that the Office of Health Promotion make sure that there's a brochure readily available to Nova Scotians, indicating to Nova Scotians how they can access funding. Another important issue that came up that night, Mr. Speaker, is that I do know that through sport in Nova Scotia, many of those individuals had indicated that they must make the individual application. Some of those families, as the minister is very much aware, are not qualified to make that application, nor are the individuals, and they have difficulty producing that application and getting it forward. So there needs to be a way that the agency or organization who can tap into the Office of Health Promotion for the funding to help that individual or individual agencies or groups is able to do that so that the individual and the individual families members don't have to put themselves in a burdensome position of having to fill that application out. We live in a real world, Mr. Speaker, and the real world out there is not very favorable at the present time. The minister knows with respect to obesity, with respect to chronic diseases, with respect to the inability to participate in active programs in one's community. The minister is aware. I don't have to stand in this legislative assembly and tell the minister of these, and I do know that my honorable colleagues on both sides of the floor have already informed the minister with respect to those very, very important issues.
Order. Would the member allow time for an introduction?
The honourable member certainly would.
The honourable member for Kings West.
Yes, I'd like to draw attention to the Speaker's Gallery to introduce two constituents from Kings West, Lane Myers and Glenn Bowlby, owner of Bowlby Meats. And I'd like to give them a warm welcome, please.
Thank you, and indeed, welcome to all our visitors in the gallery today. The honourable member for Dartmouth North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I speak passionately about the Office of Health Promotions because as a disabled person, I know the importance of having a healthy community and a healthy city and a healthy province. As a matter of fact, Mr. Speaker, I know the importance of having health for one's physical well-being. And Mr. Speaker, I want to tell you that I was fortunate enough to serve in municipal government, the former Dartmouth City government, when the former mayor, John Savage, who was also the former premier of this province, brought in the promotion of healthy communities. As a matter of fact, the former premier and the former mayor of the municipalities thought he was so impressed with the fact that it ought to be carried on, not only in the province of Nova Scotia, but also carried out through the entire the country of Canada. So he did bring it to the Federation of Canadian Municipalities with the intent of making Canada promote healthy communities across the country. And Mr. Speaker, I happened to be there, and it was important to be a part. And now, mind you, this happened in the late 80s, the late 80s and the early 90s, and we made progress. As a matter of fact, Mr. Speaker, the honourable member from Dartmouth South Portland Valley sat on some of those committees which in fact promoted healthy communities within the province of Nova Scotia and across the country. And to say that this is an extension or a branch of would be wrong, because I hope, Mr. Speaker, that the honourable minister's establishment of this office is one that will certainly allow the dollars to be put into that office and allow the programs to come forward through that office and allow Nova Scotians to have access to those programs and services, particularly the resources with respect to money, so that they can promote, or they can become actively involved in better lifestyles than what we presently have. I did say that I was last Wednesday, and I did get off track a bit, Mr. Speaker, with respect to last Wednesday, speaking to and speaking with a number of concerned citizens in the constituency of Dartmouth North, particularly around programs and services. Many of the young people that were in that community certainly felt that there was a lack of funding from all levels of government, and that the funding from levels of government, both from the Halifax Regional Municipality and the province and the federal government of Canada with respect to accessing dollars to help them get actively involved in programs and services in their community was virtually impossible to access. I do want to say to you, Mr. Speaker, that the Community Health Board, and I'm sure that the minister and in fact the Office of Health Promotions will work very closely with the Community Health Board. And I have to say to you, Mr. Speaker, that the Dartmouth Community Health Board has been working very strong in my community and working very closely with the activities and interests of that community to bring about healthy lifestyles in Dartmouth, as well as in the community of within the constituency of Dartmouth North. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to say once again, and I don't want to sound repetitive, but I think it's important that the office, the establishment of this Office of Community Health Promotions, in fact, make sure that there's adequate funding and dollars that carry out the programs and services, that there is consultation with every single department within government, and that every single department in government work closely with the Office of Health Promotions, and that in fact the Office of Health Promotions works closely with the community health boards. And finally, Mr. Speaker, that at the end of the day, that annual report comes out so that we as politicians can measure the performance of the Office of the Community of the Health Promotions Department, so that we will know the outcomes and we will be able to see the performance of the government of the day. With that, Mr. Speaker, I will look forward to this bill going on to law amendments. I will wait till the bill comes back from law amendments and listen to the witnesses and the presenters at law amendments to see what they have to say before speaking on this bill in a future day. Thank you.
Recognize the Speaker, the Honourable Member from Cape Breton West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to make a few comments on Bill number 46, an act to amend chapters 376 of the revised statutes 1989, the Public Service Act, to establish the Office of Health Promotion. Mr. Speaker, any attempt or any effort to improve the health and well-being of Nova Scotians is certainly a welcome addition to the legislative process, and indeed the entire province of Nova Scotia, and I'm sure all Nova Scotians would agree. I would like to point out at the outset, while the object is correct in what the minister is trying to achieve, I believe there has to be some considerable work done to this particular piece of legislation that would make it a much better piece of legislation. And I know we don't get into clause by clause as we debate the second reading of a piece of legislation. We generally debate the principle of the bill, and that, Mr. Speaker, allows us a certain degree of latitude to expand on certain health-related issues, whether it be organized sport or whether it be some of the other issues such as addiction prevention and so on that the minister has outlined in his bill. But I do believe it's important to highlight some of the points on this particular piece of legislation, because there are only 2 clauses to the bill with a number of sub-clauses. I would suggest that if we've all often heard the old saying that there's more meat to a hockey stick. Well, I think this would certainly classify as a hockey stick. It's a Cape Breton saying, albeit the minister would be familiar with that. You know, when things are rather skimpy, we usually use that analogy because you don't find meat on a hockey stick. And much akin to what this legislation, the optics of what it's attempting to achieve as opposed to the reality of what it is achieving. And I felt it was important to point that out because, Mr. Speaker, in this particular piece of legislation, on the second line in, the minister says there shall be an Office of Health Promotion, and then in subclause 2 it says the Governor and Council may assign a member of the Executive Council. So they may and they may not, depending upon the order and the business of the day. So it should be, I believe, firmed up considerably more. And remove the word may and insert the word shall, because it's a significant issue, as has been demonstrated. For example, with the Youth Secretariat Act that is now before the House, not the one that we have, the private members bill, the one that's already in approval. And it shows that the youth of the province, the Youth Secretariat, comes under the purview of 7 different government departments. So at any point in time, the youth of our province, particularly if it comes to an education issue or, in this case, a health issue, can be just, if one government department doesn't want to deal with it, they'll put them on to another government department. So what happens is you just eventually, as simply put, one can be passing the buck and not really achieve your goals. And given the fact that to date things have been really slow with the government on this particular issue, I would suggest that there is some concern with that, because the word may is used on several occasions in terms of the appointment of an executive officer for the Office of Health Promotion, as well as any other officers, as well as the right up to the ministerial responsibility. So there's no firm commitment per se in this legislation that these initiatives will take place. There's no guarantee, because it's all permissive legislation and is contingent upon when the Governor and Council, again, may decide to give royal assent to this particular piece of legislation. Now, I believe that there has to be a lot of additions to this, and I'm sure that our caucus and our representative in caucus will be bringing some amendments. I'd be surprised if we didn't, based on what we're seeing here, because in one of the subclauses of Chapter 1, or Clause 1 of this bill, Mr. Speaker, is the reference to the different issues that will be addressed through the Office of Health Promotion. And in subclause B of 25 subsection D, or 25D, it says one of the areas of concern will be addiction prevention. Well, Mr. Speaker, we've seen earlier today that in the Cape Breton region where addiction services on the weekends in the Cape Breton Health Care Complex, and in particular in Richmond County as well, they've been eliminated. So while it looks great and it sounds great, we're here talking about all the wonderful things we're going to do, on the other hand, the minister and his colleagues are cutting back the resources to keep people healthy. They're cutting them loose. Now, your need for an addiction service is not based on going out and making an appointment, particularly with issues of alcohol and drug abuse. The need is immediate. The need is genuine. And we don't have to expand too much on it, Mr. Speaker, when we've seen what's happened over the last number of months. We've had a death, more than one death a month for the last 18, 19 months. And what's been done? The only real addiction service for that type of drug abuse is 400 kilometers away. I mean, we have 2 cabinet ministers from Cape Breton, and why aren't they standing up for their constituents? Why aren't they doing something for their fellow Cape Bretoners? Why aren't they doing something for those people who need that very important service? It's not just good enough, Mr. Speaker, to bring legislation before the House and saying we may do something. It's not good enough. They've cut their budget, and then they bring in a paper tiger. Look down in Colchester County on Hope Farm. What happened there, Mr. Speaker? The member for Colchester Musquodoboit Valley, he wanted to do what he could to keep that place open, to help people who had alcohol and drug addiction problems. And the Minister of Community Services cut them loose. Another operation gone down. So while the government is saying it's doing lots on the issue of health promotion, and one of the key issues spoken about in this legislation, Mr. Speaker, is addiction prevention, including problem drinking and problem gambling. Well, we have problem drinking in Colchester County, we have it in Richmond County, we have it in Cape Breton County, and I'm sure every county in this province. And what's the government doing? It's cutting back its funding. The point has already been made by my colleague from Halifax Citadel that the government is taking millions of dollars more from Nova Scotians and from the taxpayers and is putting back into health promotion. And we know, Mr. Speaker, we know that the issue of nutrition is absolutely imperative if we are going to have healthy Nova Scotians, in particular the children and the youth of this province. Do you know, Mr. Speaker, that there are close to 2,000 students that go to school every day in the Cape Breton Victoria District School Board without having breakfast? Out of 16,000, over 2,000, or close to 14%, or 13%, go to school each and every day of their school year with no breakfast, no nutrition. And despite requests of the Minister of Education, despite requests to the Minister of Health, despite the request to the Minister of Health Promotion, they haven't done one iota to help those children. So it begs the question, what's the value of the legislation if the government doesn't have a real, serious commitment to that? Yes, and I'm sure with the budget coming up in a couple days' time, we'll have something outlined in there that there'll be more money for the office of the Minister of Health Promotion. Well, why wouldn't there be? Because the government is shutting down these other services like Hope Farm in Colchester County. And heavens forbid, that honourable member from Colchester Musquodoboit Valley, who's on the government side, couldn't even get his own colleagues, and in particular the Minister of Community Services, to help him. So if the backbenchers on that side of the government can't get the ministers to listen, what hope do we have on this side? What hope? Well, isn't that nicely put? The backbenchers on the government side said none. That's the indictment that that member has for the people of Nova Scotia. That's the indictment that that member, who comes from rural Nova Scotia, has for his own constituents. And no, Mr. Speaker, I want to embarrass that member by naming the member, because he has enough problems in his riding, in his constituency. So, Mr. Speaker, the question I ask is rhetorically, because it's not question period, but ask the Minister of Tourism, now soon to be, or the Minister responsible for health promotion, what is he doing for those 2,000 children every day that go to school in the Cape Breton Victoria District School Board? What's he doing? Not a thing. Not a thing. Mr. Speaker, so the issue of health promotion is very important. You know, the elementary students in our school system here in Nova Scotia receive physical education training as part of their curriculum. But if you look at the way the curriculum is set up, and I suppose I can speak to a certain extent for one or two of the boards that I know, and it may not be universal. I know some people that have an educational background would be more attuned to this. But the elementary level, they may only have a half an hour of exercise, maybe an hour at most, a week. That's not enough. That's not enough. That's not even near enough. And if you only have that, let's say if you're going through the 5-period cycles on your curriculum, it may be a week and a half before you get back to physical education for those students of that particular class. So they're not even getting physical education exercises once a week. It may be once every week and a half. And then if you go to the junior high, more in particular the high schools, where they have the PAL program, this program for the physically active lifestyles, grade 11, and so on. That's not addressing all the needs. The minister knows that. And what has he done? He has done absolutely nothing. Mr. Speaker. So this bill, you know, the title and the optics, very promising, very noble. But the reality is it doesn't have the substance. There's no meat to it. And I would ask the minister, from the time it leaves the chamber here, goes to law amendments and comes back, that he will show the leadership and show the initiative to take some of the permissive language out of it and put something a little more in the true legislative format to make it compulsory.
More meat in the hockey stick, right?
That's right. More meat in the hockey stick. That's right. Well, there's certain things that can be said. Well, you know, there are different sports, and they say that golf is just a good walk spoiled. Now, for the golfers in our audience, I'm not so sure they would agree. I really haven't been able to come to terms with the fact that you hit this little white ball as hard as you can until you can't almost see it, and then you go looking for it. When you find it again, you got to hit it again and go look for it again. I haven't got past that. It doesn't seem to make any sense. If you're looking for the ball and you find it, put it in your pocket and go home. But I guess there's therapy there. I just haven't been able to come to terms with. But, Mr. Speaker, avid golfers know that there's good therapeutic value as well as the physical lifestyle that goes with that, if they don't make it back to the clubhouse before the sun goes down. But any type of sport or physical activity, it's very important. And I think the point has been made that Nova Scotia is perhaps one of the least physically fit provinces in terms of its citizens than any other jurisdiction. At least the documentation has been pointed out to that effect. As I say, if you're in a race, don't stop and turn around, because those that are coming behind you may overtake you. Well, I would suggest in Nova Scotia's case, we've been overtaken years ago. And we don't have to worry about looking back, because there's nobody behind us in terms of health promotion. We are at the bottom of the heap. And I would ask the government to address that. And yes, I'm glad to see that the good member for Colchester-Musquodoboit Valley is listening, because he knows about the issue of addiction prevention. He knows how his colleague, the Minister of Community Services, has cut his constituency loose on Hope Farm and the genuine need for the citizens in his constituency. And there is life, Mr. Speaker.
Point of order, the honourable member for Colchester-Musquodoboit Valley.
Yes, the honourable member for Cape Breton West, the very learned member, is making some erroneous statements here, Mr. Speaker, in the House. And I know it's unusual that I would make that claim against that member, but I do have a letter here that the Honourable Minister of Community Services sent to the Board of Directors at Hope Farm. And the letter was requesting accountability, Mr. Speaker, and I'm sure you're aware of the contents of that letter and how hard we worked and the minister worked on that file. And for that member to stand in the House and say that we didn't try to save Hope Farm, he should stand up and apologize, Mr. Speaker, because it's absolutely unacceptable. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Wasn't a point of order, it was more of a point of clarification. The honourable member for Cape Breton West has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As usual, there's consistency with the member for Colchester-Musquodoboit Valley. He's the one that always says that there's a lot of baffle-gab in the legislature. He's proven it here today by his comments. They don't ask for letters. They don't ask for cheap talk. They ask for support. They need a financial commitment to help these people who are suffering from alcohol and drug addiction. And they didn't get it from this government. All they got was a letter and a lot of cheap talk. And there's lots of opportunity for accountability in that process, and that honourable member knows it. He is trying to be an apologist for a government who has a right-wing agenda in cutting any social agency in this province loose, like it's done to the Cape Breton Regional Hospital Addiction Service, like they've done in Richmond County, like they've done with the Hope Farm in his own constituency. And he would rather apologize for that government than stand up and fight for those who need that help. The weak, the vulnerable, the innocent.
Recognize the honourable member for Colchester-Musquodoboit on a point of order.
I wonder if the honourable member would entertain a question.
From this distinguished gentleman, yes.
Honourable member from.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to ask the honourable member if he could tell his House, whereas he seems to have so much profound knowledge about Hope Farm and Coldstream, Colchester County, if he could tell the House who the former executive director of Hope Farm was.
The honourable member for Cape Breton West.
I do stand to be corrected, but I believe the last name was Turner. I stand to be corrected. I am right, yes. Okay. So unlike the honourable member who would like to kind of cast out these little rabbit snares, thinking that we don't know what's going on and it's just outside political optics, I'm sorry, I do have a lot of minutiae and detail on that particular file. You know, Mr. Speaker, talk about health promotion and helping people in this province.
Recognize the honourable member for Colchester Muscatobit on a point of order.
The honourable member for Cape Breton West would like this letter tabled. I think it's only fair that I table the letter, and it should answer all his questions and concerns. Thank you.
Okay, it's not a point of order. The honourable member for Cape Breton West, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Perhaps we should have had this issue before the House long before now, and we could have given more hope to the folks in his constituency rather than just idle words. Mr. Speaker, as well, you talk about health promotion and helping Nova Scotians live a healthy lifestyle. You know, there was a regional plan just put out recently by the Department of Community Services with regards to the homes, I forget the proper word, I guess, for women. Transition homes in this province. A new regional plan. But when you look at the fine print, what has this government again done with its right-wing agenda, which flies in the face of this legislation? This regional plan is a code word for reducing the total number of transition houses in the province. A regional concept, which is a way, the Minister of Community Services finally acknowledges that that's what they want to do, reduce the total number of transition houses in the province. Well, at least he fesses up to it. And the executive directors of transition houses are quite concerned about this. There's another example. There's another example of the government saying one thing and doing another. You know, and where is the largest need in many cases? In rural Nova Scotia. Again, for a government that's represented predominantly throughout rural Nova Scotia, and what are they doing? Turning their backs on their constituents. So there are two issues right there. You know, having an abused mother and her children travel all the way from Cumberland County to New Glasgow at 2 o'clock in the morning for help 100 and some kilometers away doesn't seem to me to be a rather efficient use of resources. Now these children.
I don't think so. Would the member yield his time for an introduction?
Oh, Mr. Speaker, with your permission, I would take great pleasure in introducing the former member for Dartmouth South, who is in your gallery, who is a former Minister of Natural Resources and a very colorful member when he was here, to say the least. And I take great pleasure in introducing and ask all members of the House to give the warm notice to the former member, Tim Olive.
Thank you. Indeed, it's always great to see former members come to the legislature.
And he does look good up there, Mr. Speaker.
Member for West, you have the floor.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I know the former member for Dartmouth South would be very excited about this legislation, about healthy lifestyles, proper nutrition, injury prevention, tobacco control, healthy sexuality, physical activity, a whole lot of other things that are in there, and I'm not going to go into too much detail. Mr. Speaker, I don't want to belabor this particular debate too long, but I do want to, indicate to the minister through you that in fact this bill needs substantive improvement. It's a good piece of legislation. The intent is there, but well, it would be like trying to get across the Myra River in a basket. You're not going to make it. You may make it, quarter of the way, but you're going to sink before you get there unless you make some improvements to this legislation. So I would ask the minister to give this a healthy second look. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Seeing no more speakers on Bill 46, I'll recognize the Minister of Tourism, Culture and Heritage for closing remarks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I appreciate the comments my colleagues have made throughout the debate on second reading, especially about golf, and hearing various remarks about population health from various members, and certainly the approach that we are taking, we intend to take through the Office of Health Promotion is very much based on that population health model, because it's vital that our office is much more than working just with stakeholders or just within our own office. It's vital that we work with departments such as community services on food security, on various other issues, on providing more opportunities for young people to get involved in such